at you all the way from our dorm rooms to your conference rooms. Saba, Lee, and Dan Tiemann here, two college students who are ready to talk to you guys about business and lifestyle from our personal experiences.
Each week we'll discuss about our lifestyle as college students as well as our tips and strategies starting in the business field. We'll bring on successful entrepreneurs in the millennial generation to share with us their journey and how they got started and where they're at now.
Our goal is to help you students, millennials, and entrepreneurs gain inspirational advice via our spontaneous conversations and meaningful guidance. Let's dive on in.
What is going on, guys? It's episode 50 of Dorm Rooms and Conference Rooms. And yeah, that's right, guys. That's episode 50. And for our 50th episode, we have a super special guest on that has been all around the podcasting community and has made a six-figure income per month business out of it. To get us going, as always, Saba, how are you doing?
I am super pumped and super excited today because we do have a really special guest on. So let's get started, Dan.
Yeah, guys, we have Lee Dumas on. Lee Dumas has been podcasting now for about 5 years. He's been a part of the podcast community and has been all over the world doing it. And he's interviewed some amazing people from Tony Robbins to Gary Vee to Brandon T. Adams. He's interviewed a lot of people. And guys, he's been able from this to create a six-figure per month income business, and he's just been blowing up by storm after that, and he's growing every single year. But let's hop into it. John, how are you doing today?
DT in the house, JLD here. I'm on fire, brother.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I love your podcast. Been listening for years now. But the first question we have for you is, so if we want to start, podcasting like you and I do, and for starting from scratch to nothing, how do you get there, and how do you get listeners in the process to start out as soon as you jump on, whatever, iTunes?
Well, you realize this is a process. Like, this isn't something you snap your fingers and they will come. Like, it just doesn't happen that way. And the best thing that we can do as podcasters when we're first starting off is focus on the show. Like, how can we make it unique? How can we make it special? How can we really make it good? Literally, just how can we make our show good? Like, stop worrying about all the different tweet hacks and the social media hacks and the this and the that, and work on making the show good so the people that do listen, they say, wow, this show's good. Let me tell my friend about it. Let me tell my other friend about it. And you literally will grow an audience that matters one listener at a time. And it doesn't sound sexy and it doesn't sound, super exciting when you put it that way. But hey, I've grown a business that launched, from a podcast alone that makes multiple $1 million a year. So that's sexy. And, it wasn't sexy day one when I was with one listener, or day two when I had 4 listeners, but it was sexy, day 1700 that we're talking right now. And I have over 50 million listens on my show, 1.5 million per month. Patience, time. You just graduated, DT. We were talking about it in the pre-interview chat. I mean, you could jump into some real world job right now and this sounds a little dramatic, and it is, and ruin your life. Or you can, take the second and have some other opportunities with some cool things you have going on in the social media world. And, to me, of course, older and looking back in hindsight, it's a no-brainer. Like, put off that crap for as long as possible, hopefully forever, and just focus on building something that you're proud of one step at a time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, John, once we do get those listeners on our podcast, how do we start monetizing it if we want to do that with our podcast or the listeners who are listening here today? Because I know you've made a living off of your podcast. So how would one want to start doing that with theirs?
Sab, it's a great question. And I'm going to be not really boring, but I'm going to kind of go back to the core here, which is you start monetizing one person at a time. Now, what I mean by that is, when you have somebody that reaches out to you in the early days and they say, oh, Saba, like, I just really loved the last podcast episode. Like, this was really valuable. You reply back and you say, hey, can we jump on a quick call? Just like a 5-minute Skype call. And guess what? That doesn't sound super fun to have these one-on-one phone calls or super scalable or leverageable. But that one phone call that you're going to have, you can ask, hey, how'd you hear about us? And then you can start to learn ways that people are hearing about your show, and you can amplify the ways that are working. And you can also ask the question, hey, by the way, you listen to the show, you like the show. What are you struggling with? And you can start to hear what their obstacles are. And then you can start to create solutions for their obstacles, for their challenges, for their pain points. And then guess what? Once you've done that, you can offer the solution to them in the form of a product, a service, a community, whatever that might be. And so you've taken that non-scalable one-on-one call and then turned it into potentially an amazing idea that you can leverage and scale, to the nth degree. So you have to, at the beginning, do things that don't scale so that you can get the knowledge and information to then do things that do scale.
So John, you talk about scaling, you talk about all these things. What is your belief in mentorship then? Because I know that you paid X number of dollars to get a mentor when you first started learning about the podcast world, after quitting the 9-to-5, and you really jumped in head first, putting in a lot of money for that. What's your view on mentorship then?
Listen, mentorship is absolutely critical, but a lot of people go about mentorship wrong. You need to find a person who is currently where you want to be. That's the mentor for you. Like not Richard Branson or Mark Cuban, unless of course you want to own the Dallas Mavericks or run, an airline company, then they might be good mentors for you. But guess what? I wanted to run a successful business podcast. That's what I wanted to do. So I went out and I found a successful business podcast host and I hired her. And Jamie Masters, my mentor, my first ever mentor, she guided me during the process. And guess what? She did an amazing job because she'd already been there and done that. She had seen the pitfalls, the mistakes, the struggles, and the shortcuts and the ways to, maximize X, Y, and Z. So I found somebody who was where I wanted to be. And what did I do? I just invested in myself and followed her guidance. And that was critical.
So, John, how did you get into writing 2 books? Because you launched the Freedom Journal and then the Mastery Journal on Kickstarter, and that was pretty awesome. And I have a copy myself, but how did you really get into writing those 2?
In fact, that's how we all met because Brandon Adams on my Kickstarter campaign went ahead and bought the package, which was for me to come speak at your events. And so he invested heavily. It was a $10K package. And I came out to Des Moines, Iowa, and I got to hang out with you guys and a lot of other cool people out there and see the city and have some fun and speak and, hit the town, et cetera, et cetera. And so that to me was one of those things where I said, how did I get here? And it really was, how did I start with the idea to create this journal? And now it's turned into 2 journals, both the Freedom Journal, accomplish your number 1 goal in 100 days, and the Mastery Journal, master productivity, discipline, and focus in 100 days. And so like thinking about that and like looking back into my journey, I said, well, I did exactly what I just shared with you 2 a couple minutes ago. I asked my audience, what are you guys struggling with right now? And they said, John, well, what is the one commonality that all of your guests on EOFire, the successful entrepreneurs, what's their one commonality that they all have of success? And I said, well, they know how to set and accomplish goals. And my listeners said, well, how do you do that? And I said, wow, I didn't know that was like a thing that a lot of people didn't know how to do. Let me create the resource, the guide that will allow people to set their number 1 goal and accomplish that goal in 100 days. And I tested the theory and, I sat down and learned about goals and I crafted the tool of what is the Freedom Journal now. And then I put it out there on Kickstarter, on crowdfunding to make sure that it would actually work before I went and spent a ton of money investing in creating the physical product. And in just 33 days, we did over $453,000 in sales. So I guess we definitely proved the concept, so to speak. And so then I went ahead and made the books and distributed them. And, since then we've continued to do between $20,000 to $40,000 a month just in journal sales alone. So again, it goes back to the core. Have those conversations that don't scale because they'll give you ideas that will allow you to scale your ideas to the nth degree. And now we sold over 23,000 Freedom Journals. We're over 6,000 Mastery Journals because, that just went live, a year after the Freedom Journal. So there's just a lot of opportunities out there when you do things that don't scale.
So John, I know you're the fire master and you're bringing great fire to this show. And it's so sad that it has to be so short. But another great question that I have for you here is is going to be about time management here. Because I know everyone wants to hop on EOFire because it's just the biggest show that's out there right now for podcasting. How do you handle your time then?
It's tough. And that's why we're kind of limited right now to 15 minutes because I do 1 day a month where I am on 24 other shows. You guys are hearing that right. You are literally the 20th of 24 shows that I'm on today. You're number 20. And after this, I have 4 more, as I finish my day off. And I do that just 1 day a month. You cannot interview me on your show on any day except the 1 day that I set aside. And it's the same thing for EOFire. I do 16 interviews on the first Monday and first Tuesday of every month. So 32 interviews in 2 days. So now I've taken me being on 24 other shows every single month and me interviewing 32 other entrepreneurs for my show. And I've condensed that down to 3 days. So what does that allow me to do? It allows me to be efficient with my other 28 days that I have in the month, now that I'm only using 3 days a month for these interviews. So it's called batching. And whatever you do in life, you really need to say, hey, how can I batch this together? How can I do these phone calls back to back? How can I do this one thing where it's more efficient, effective, so that I can be productive, specifically producing the content that I want to produce is going to make the biggest impact for my business. So for me, it's all about batching. And I think that every entrepreneur needs to look at their life and say, where can I batch more so that I can free up more time to be creative, to produce content that really matters?
So John, I know, like you said, we're really short on time here. So in really quick, what is your biggest piece of advice you give our college listeners?
Listen, I've been in college, I've been there. It feels like yesterday. It definitely was not. So, it's going to go fast, but this is the biggest thing that I would say. Excuse me. Chill out. Those are the 2 words, like literally chill out. Like when I was 20, 21, 22, like I thought that I had to start that job, begin my career, start climbing those ladders, whatever those ladders were. And, it was a mistake. It was always a mistake, because at 20, 22, 25, 35, however old you are, like we always just think that now is the time that we have to start being quote unquote grown up or an adult, or start down this, boring, lame career path. It never has to happen. We live in a different world now. You can choose your career path. You can choose your passion. And if you're able and willing to work hard enough and to provide enough value in that area, you will win. Maybe not to the tune of millions of dollars a year, like I've been able to achieve for a couple of years now, maybe to the tune of $50K a year or $100,000. Who knows what that number is? But does it really matter when it's doing something that you love and you enjoy doing and that you have the opportunity to grow? So that would be my 2 words of advice, is to chill out. I wish somebody had told me to chill out at 16, at 20, at 26. So, keep saying that to yourself. Just chill out, relax. Life is long. It's a marathon. Learn the skills, take risks, do all those things that you can do now, frankly, before you get to the point where taking risks just isn't as feasible.
John, it was awesome having you on. We had JLD in the house, guys. JLD is a hard to come by guy. He is like down in Puerto Rico. He's killing it with the podcasting. He's killing it with his journals. Like he said, guys, multiple $1 million years and everything like that. He's really a great guy, really good to know. If you haven't checked out his podcast yet, check it out at EOFire. You can find that on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, any of that. You can find that EOFire, guys. He's bringing a 7 days a week podcast, or he's interviewing successful entrepreneurs. But anyway, guys, you can find us directly at dr2cr.com. And to finish this out, as always, Saba, what are some final words?
John, thank you so much for coming on today. It was so great to have you on our 50th show, guys. So I hope you guys got a lot of insight out of this show. But thank you guys so much for listening today on Dorm Rooms to Conference Rooms.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Dorm Rooms and Conference Rooms. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you haven't joined our accelerator program yet, you can find that at livetogrind.com/college, where we connect you with today's latest influencers and experts in their fields.